Episode 6.
Woo!
We go to season 2, episode 6.
Yeah, that's exciting, isn't it? We keep flying through them with no structure, but secretly structure, but meandering, as I usually say.
Absolutely. Yeah, how's your week been?
Oh, it's been mighty. It's been mighty. Lots of things going on. Programs from a work point of view, new programs starting here, there, and everywhere. So it's great. New sports, engaging with new sports, understanding how the sport kind of operates, what the journey those coaches have had, some issues that they have that we want to support them in understanding a little bit more. So lots of cool things happening there. I'm just feeling like the summer is coming and then it's not sometimes. So I'm happy when it's sun is shining. I'm getting out and about in London safely, obviously. And then I have to retract because it's monsooning. But yeah, that's allowed a nice mix of getting out and about, exploring new spaces, and yeah, just I love engaging in new activities or new spaces and just kind of seeing, you know, what they bring to me. Not necessarily all feeding into work stuff, but yeah, just that's been good. It's been a really good week. How about you?
Very nice. Yeah, it's all right. I've got over my disaster coaching session last week.
Oh, we need to talk about that for sure.
Well, it wasn't a disaster. That's unfair on myself. It definitely wasn't a disaster. That you know, when you have that feeling inside you, when you come off the pitch and you go, that probably could have been a bit better. And that kind of wrestle and then that, you know, people around me, no, it was great. Players loved it. They did this. I'm like, yeah, I know, but that's not what I'm feeling.
Okay, so pause there. Take me through the moment you felt something wasn't right or didn't hit what you wanted, to the conversations with coaches. Like, how did you know that something wasn't right? And then what did you do about that as you were walking from A to B?
I mean, we're not planned to talk about this, have we?
No. Sorry, I know, yeah.
You know, so I left. I do you know what? I've also noticed that watching these back as I look up a lot and I'm thinking, so I planned the session and I was happy with the planning until I got there and realized that I wasn't happy with the planning. So the structure of the practices. So the constraint that I have is 22 mostly big men on a 23 by 40 area, tight for fast moving big men.
Yes.
So trying to manage that is one challenge. So, but I was happy with the practices that I'd put together because they were based more on getting players to think to solve problems, okay, rather than the week before, which was 1v1 competitive duels. So I'd said to them, right, I preempted it and said, today is Thinking Thursday, to which the captain replied on the WhatsApp group straight away saying, it's going to be a few that are going to struggle with that. Which started off some conversation, which was cool. Like, you know, I dropped it in early and started with, so it's better from the start to break it down and go to 2 5v5s or 6v6s across for a warm-up. And I definitely don't buy into straight lines up, turn round, blah, blah, blah. We went straight into playing touch rugby.
Oh, wow.
So I had an American football and a rugby ball. I'm basically working through my son's sporting equipment and using that as the basis for my practices at the start.
You're giving away all your tools now. They think he's gone and bought this, he's meticulously planned. You're like, take this from the bag today.
Yeah, what has Callum got that I can?
Yeah.
So that was fine. But so good practice, lots of moving about very quickly. I have a young lad called Dylan who's early 20s, relatively new to coaching. He does the under 18s, helping. So I've said to Dylan, right, before the practice, you're going to need strong refereeing skills. Okay. And I need to do a better job of helping him with what that looks like. Because when you have very competitive people, like they'll contest everything, like they will contest everything. And if you're officiating that moment and there's a glimmer of not sure about the rules, etc., they'll jump all over you. So you've got to be really hard on it right from the start. And I'm confident doing that. Dylan probably needs some support and probably should have known, or I should have done a better job in teeing him up with the specifics of the rules of the practice. So right from the start, it got chaotic and chirpy, but I was all right with that because, you know, people travelled for an hour and a half to get there, so it was quite lively. Then we went into the second practice, which was, so it was a 1v1. So let me take that sentence back. They had the choice, okay? So they were now playing on the same pitch using the same end zones that we've been playing tag rugby in. But you had 5 on one side at the halfway line, 5 on the other. One team attacking, one team defending. So the attacking team had 10 attempts. Okay, so they got 10 balls basically to try and score as many points as they can. Mm-hmm. So if they go 1v1, they got 3 points. And that means dribbling it past the opponent and stopping it in the end zone. If they go 1v2, they get 8 points. If they go 2v2, they get 4 points. If they go 2v1, they get 3 points, etc. So there was a scoring system, but it was basically risk or reward, right?
Yeah, I love it.
If you think you're big time, go 1v2 for 8 points. But what they worked out very quickly was ego was getting ahead of common sense till they worked out quickly, right, let's go 2v1 because we can rack up some points pretty quickly. But I was getting them to think about the tactics and strategies about how they were trying to do stuff. I then decided to engage one of the assistant managers to do the scoring system. He did a great job with piss poor communication from me to find his way into coming up with scoring it. So I really didn't do a great job of helping him with that. I could have been far better, but he did.
No, but like, okay, besides the self-awareness factor there, that people need to tune into those kind of things and be aware of what's happening and the flow of things and the interactions and the discomfort from some, there's a bigger picture there around the relationship you have with your coaches during a session. So we talked in season 1 about sharing the practice plan or guiding through and giving responsibilities of the debrief spaces that you might be in, but actually just checking in with them as well is important. How's it going? What support do you need here? Helping them to reflect a little bit more if it is in the norm. And then the roles within that session, because there is something bigger. And I know we're talking team sports here, but it could change varied on the age group you have and the gender and the level of experience about, like, you know, like, how are they feeling about the engagement? So you primed them a little bit, but you know, how much pressure was that on them initially to go, oh, I'm going to have to ref, what if this, what if that? And then what, on the flip side, what is the respect level from the players going to be like? So how do you prime the players to engage with this, or do you at all?
Yeah. But this was all going on now in the heat of the moment, right? And the players were clear on the scoring system because it was on the board, right? You know, if you pick this. But I quickly worked out that 10 attempts was too many. And we went through the game twice. So we did an individual competition, then a team competition. And I should have cut it to 5. And I didn't. And I thought about it midway through. And so that was, you know, when you go in, like, reflection in action straight away. This is too many. But it was too late to cut it. That was the problem. So I recognised it. But it was too late to cut it, but that's sometimes the reality, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I wonder, you know, so you've reflected on that part being cut short and the opportunity in future to go off piece, because we've spoke about changing our plans as well, haven't we, in the first session? But also I wonder, there's, you know, you're taking on responsibility there. Is that something about the environment? And I know you're relatively new in, but the environment that eventually they'll go, oh gosh, you know, Nick or whatever they call you, Nick, like, gosh, that's a lot. or the other coaches might identify something and say, hey, do you think we should hold it up here, without you taking all that weight on your shoulder? So is there, you know, a down the line environment that the athletes and the co-coaches going to go, right, I spotted something here, and you have this eye contact or a little nod or a little pause for vocal kind of exchanges, or verbal exchanges? But yeah, just sparking off there, I wonder. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we need to get to that. But what they would have seen would have been players doing lots, constantly involved, 2v1s, 2v2s, lots of repetition, highly competitive. So they probably would have just seen the players getting a lot of returns from it. But they didn't see in my head, which was, you know,
not working.
personal struggles I was fighting with.
But like, also something you've sparked there is the perception that people have by this games-based approach that everyone's busy equally sign it's great.
Yeah.
You know, I know that's a whole other avenue to go down, but, you know, are we getting creative in the chaos, or is the chaos hindering the creativity? And how can we identify that ourselves? You know, you have a lot of experience in that space, so you could see what the gains were, the risk and reward element of that, or the consequences of going the extra couple of 2 or 3 rotations. But that's a really great topic for people to pause on and think about their session and who's in.
Yeah. And one bit I was pleased with during the session was, between 10 attempts, went from individual to team, I brought the players in and we talked about, right, well, what strategies are you using? What's the plan? Because our little 4G pitch is at the back of the main pitch. So I was able to go, right, so when you're on there and this little micro picture happens in a 2v1 or 2v2 or 3v2 moment, what's your strategy? What's your tactic that you're going to take from here and apply in that context? So try to link it into their thinking, into the bigger picture, that it wasn't just a going through the motions part, but I wanted them to really think about, right, how are we going to attack?
Yeah. And that, I know I'm referencing a lot of other sessions here now, but it's really important that people kind of connect the dots a little bit to the practice design. So like, where are you asking those challenging questions in the session, or do they appear at all? And how are you helping them make sense even during the session, so that there's learning happening throughout and it's evolving? And even the feedback element, you know, it's not just recall, although that's useful for them to, you know, over the space over 5-6 sessions, the recall of something and that go into long term. How are they able to exchange with you, build a relationship, and you understand where their knowledge is at? Because I think it was Elliot Newell put on his Twitter a couple of months ago now, the workshop scenario. So if you do a workshop, how's that translating to a pitch? And, you know, it's in similar vein, but obviously more practical, taking a smaller session or an adapted or tweaked part of a whole and being able to support them to understand what the impact can be and grow it.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I didn't do was then check in after that next lot of 10, which should have been 5. So the strategies that you tried to use now, what worked, what didn't work, and why. So I didn't bookend that kind of learning moment for them, which I needed to have done. I didn't, but I recognized I didn't, but I probably should have done.
That's important. That's really important. One other thing that I wanted to bring up before we meander to the next topic, reflection. Do you always reflect on things that went wrong? Or how did you, like, I guess it was something bubbling and frustrating that brought the not the negative as such, but the tweaks you could have made to the surface. But then you said, like, and this went well. And I just wondered, I was like, at the point, or even just after that, later on that evening, did you say, well, actually, that was really good as well?
Yeah, so there was 2 other moments that happened where I thought my coaching was okay, but they weren't during the session. Okay. So it probably sparks a question for you here. So when does coaching start and stop? Because I had 2 players I wanted to speak to, one to learn a bit more about, big centre half. So my question to him was, as he's getting changed, and I did the walk to the car park with him. What's your super strength? What are you bringing to this team? I don't know you, but what are you bringing? So he talked me through what he thinks is his super strength. To which I had to say that I need you to bring that onto the pitch now, because I'm not seeing, if this is your super strength, I'm not seeing enough of this in action. Mm-hmm. So how can you start to show me this is what you're really good at? So I had that one conversation on the car park walk, and then I walked back, and then I deliberately waited to find another player, another massive man, to then go and say, right, tell me about what I see when I watch you shoot.
Okay, wow.
And I'm, bear in mind, I am talking to him like this. And he said, well, and he's now talking to me like this. It's probably a bit hit and miss. It's quite erratic, which was like he's opened the door for the conversation here. Yeah. And he said, well, what do you see? So I was like, awesome. So yeah, I see a bit of that. And what I would love to see would be some deception and guile and cleverness, because at the moment you just smack the back out of everything as hard as you can. Mm. So how can you start to bring this in to make you more effective? So I think the two good pieces of coaching I did were not in the session. Right. So therefore the question to you is, when does coaching start and stop?
I mean, you're teasing me with this now. So the first thing, mindful of burnout, my thing would be, well, does it ever? Does it ever stop? If we're in this somewhat altruistic role about developing people and human beings, and it's underpinned, not solely, but underpinned by relationship building, are you becoming more self-aware in every walk of life that you're in order to enhance the quality of the relationships you can build, the conversations you can have, to maximize the potential of the people in front of you? And what I love there is the smile on my face came from like the question around, where does coaching take place? So for me, you could say you have a constraint of a time that you have to operate in within, because you've got the pitch from next time to this time. But actually the connectivity before the event, some people liking to know the session, some people don't, the co-creation of the session plan with your coaches, the follow-up and reflection, the prep for games, day -1, -2, whatever it is, or training camp that's X amount of weeks away, all of that, the feedback that comes into it. My antennas around performance analysis came up when you started talking about what he could see and how useful that might be. So it's endless. I know there's a burnout element, and we want to be, the well-being side of that kicks in, but from a sensible point of view, it's ongoing. And it's for people to identify that all the work that you put in, it's like I use the workshop analogy. If somebody was doing a workshop, you're not just, well, I hope to goodness, you're not just delivering in that hour or that 90 minutes. The prep that's gone into it, the reflection and the support after that to feedback and understand where you can take it next. But I love that. I hope people pause on that and think, yeah, I could have a car park conversation. I could have a walking A to B conversation. So you're breaking the eye contact. It's less, frontal on and what do you think of this? And I noticed this. You can still do the great questions, but it's intimidating.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. So there's another interesting thing I'd like to share with you. Well, actually, it's not share, bring it to the forefront, because we both had a tweet that came through, because we do encourage people to engage us on Twitter and email, and there's been a lot of different bits and pieces that we do share that comes through. But this was around a Perspex that was up, I didn't even call them that, a board, a clear board that was up in a football. I don't know if we know the location exactly, and we don't have a full background context, but looked to be in a hallway, and it had the badge of the team, and it had the category A teams that we've beaten, and it had the date on it, it had the team and the age group, it had the score line, and it had the coaches who coached the team. And there's an immediate conversation that I'd like to have with you about this, but then beyond that, for people to kind of think about the environment they're going into, the colors that are there, the mottos or logos that are on the wall, how impactful are they, who decided what they were, the photos and pictures that you see in sub clubhouses, they're 100 years old and it shows you the history. But then you have ones that are, you know, big words up here on the board, you know, welcome to work or going to different places. And you kind of think, okay, well, are they motivational? Are they wallpaper? When do we redo them? How much history's with them? So back to the first part of that. What are your thoughts on this thing that we saw on Twitter on the Perspex that was up?
Yeah, are you going to magically cut it in about here?
Yes, it's right here.
Yeah, it was really interesting, wasn't it? And I think if we're going to practice what we talk about and kind of lead with curiosity, I think we have to be really overt and say we're guessing, we don't know, and it would be really interesting. As you said, we don't know the location, the context, the rationale, but it would be really interesting to start to understand it from that club's perspective, to say, you know, what are you hoping to achieve by, you know, saying that you beat a Category 1 academy, of which most of them were Premier League teams. What's the purpose? What are you hoping to share with it? And yeah, I think my gut reaction was why. So on the picture, one of the teams that they beat was the Fulham under 11s, and they beat them 5-1. And I used to coach Fulham under 11s, and that wasn't my group. Clearly, you know, I'd left a long time before that. But knowing how Fulham works and operates, certainly at the time, and things obviously move on, but the club or the team that Fulham, in this example, took to that game, like, who was the team? It could have been managed in a way that they took a load of trialists and they left their so-called better players at home. It could have been that they had another match somewhere else against another Cat 1 team, and therefore they took a different group of players. How Fulham approaching it in terms of the periodization and the program for those kids, and where they saw the importance of this fixture compared to others. So I think it's a really kind of, without knowing both things, it could give quite a false impression of this scoreline, really. And what I used to do when I was there, so Brighton was a really good example. So when we played Brighton, we had better players than Brighton. It wasn't anything down to my coach. You know, we just had some better players, and we had a population to pick from of London, which is a huge, vast area, compared to Brighton, which is a very different option. And during the week, you know, I would phone the Brighton coach and go, look, what kind of stuff are you working on at the moment? How could we set up in the first 2 quarters to make things difficult for you so you can test what you've been working on? And this is the kind of stuff that we've been working on. You know, we've been working on playing out from the back. So in quarter 3, could you go with a real high press? Because it meant that our kids are under a bit of pressure to learn how to play out from the back in a match. So we'd have these kind of conversations, because otherwise, if we just went into it and we just played all our best kids, it would be, you know, a pointless score and a pointless experience for both lots of kids. And that's what I'd really love to understand about why they've put that there. And if it was about recruitment, look at us, we've beaten these teams, and it was for the parents, I could see why a bit more. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's some stuff to unpick there. There's some stuff that, you know, it could serve a purpose in a certain space with some information on it. But, you know, we're talking about certain age groups, if they do see that, and the impact or that tilted scale on when does it become motivational and when is it not?
Mm.
What motivates the people in front of you to come? Because I'm all about the environment and stadiums and exploring different spaces for creativity, if you like. So when I go and watch, over to the Velo Park over near the Olympic Park, and I go in and I'm not, au fait with all the cycling terms and stuff, but I'll go in and I'll look and I'll see a journey mural on the wall and I'll think some remnants of 2012 and I think, oh, that's really cool. But there isn't a thing about one person smashing another person, and they're not putting anyone down, they're lifting everyone up. And when you go to Caversham and there's all the names and canvases on the wall, I do wonder when you get to the point of what's cool and what's unrealistic. So if Caversham is a space where you have amazing athletes training as a central hub, like, are you inspired every time you come to the top of the stairs and you see those canvases of Olympians wearing their medals? And I think that's really cool. But in other places where maybe they're not a training hub for Olympians, can it be detrimental to the motivation if there's a medal on the wall, or if there's something on the wall that's out of their reach at that time? So yeah, it's just really interesting what words are on the wall, what colors, and how does that relate to the group? What photos are on the wall or in the space? What do you use and why are you using it is what I'd love to know from people, the general population. So there's some really cool stuff I've seen, fortunately, with my role to travel to the length and breadth of the country. But one that, speaking of the Olympic Park, one that always comes up in conversation with my wife as a swimmer was why there isn't more in the pool around the amazing stuff that happened, not just in 2012, but in that space, because it doesn't have that wow factor that you might think you're going to have when you go to such a cool place. But yeah, so it's interesting. I know I have a lens, I know different spaces for me are really exciting, and they don't have to be for any particular sport. I just wondered when they think of the people that are coming there, even a coach planning a session or a camp, and you have athletes from all over coming to this, what kind of, from the car park, if you like, into the space, what's happening? So yeah. Some really interesting topics this week.
And we're clearly mid-Euros at the moment.
Yes, goodness me, yes, absolutely. Exciting times.
It is indeed exciting times, and I'm sure there'll be some coaching things to pull apart on the back of what we've seen from, well, as the competition hots up in the football sense. I'm sure there'll be some interesting coaching things, and the one we'll save it for next week, but penalties is clearly a hot topic at the moment. And my wife, as a psychologist, has done a lot of kind of work on this kind of stuff, and it was very interesting watching the French penalties yesterday. Got to the last one, and she said, as he's walked up, doesn't look confident. Whistle is blown by the referee, and he took it super quick. And all the evidence, when you look at greater percentage chance of scoring, is there's a bit, there's a delay, you pause after the referee, and Mbappe ball down, gone. So all of this kind of, quite shaky, putting the ball down, and he's going to miss it.
Oh my God.
And yeah, he did. And clearly, she could have guessed them all. But it was the only one that she went, he doesn't look confident, I don't back him here. And that was the end of that. But, I'm sure there'll be some interesting stuff that comes out of next couple of weeks.
Next week, pick up on that for sure. Well, listen, at Coach Convo, that's us on Twitter, coachconversation@gmail.com. There are 2 areas to find us at the moment. Keep following, share anything that you think is interesting, or even give us some context in your world about some of the topics that we're talking about, because we'd love to share that back and elaborate. So have a great week. Enjoy everything that you're up to, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.